We'll have some materials, we'll have some examples, and whatever we'll have, you can take everything you want, but I cannot directly give it to you. I have to hand it over to them. You need to take it from them. So, Mr. Arun, have you ever earlier did you see any examples of Hibernate? Okay, so for Hibernate you are totally new. Okay. Should I consider that you have any knowledge on JDBC? Okay, so that's very convenient then. Uh, Actually, the Hibernate is nothing but it is mostly used to overcome some of the drawbacks of the JDBC. Okay, I'll do one thing. I have prepared some PPTs for you, and we'll go through that PPTs. And today would be a demo session. If you like my demo session, we could continue. Otherwise, you can contact to my office, so they would help you out again with some other trainer. Okay, I'll start the screen sharing. Just a moment, I'm starting the PPT. I have prepared it. Okay, has been started. So all and share screen. Just accept this. So it's well and good then. So basically, as we know, persistence, why is it important? Like to make it the data, permanently available, we use persistence logics. Before just going to the ORM or Hibernate, we'll just see what are the drawbacks of JDBC, and then we'll see how Hibernate overcomes those drawbacks. Let us have some theory part on this. Okay, you are saying something, Varun? No, yeah, actually I was informed that Spring should be taken at the morning session, and Hibernate was at the evening session. Okay, so tomorrow morning we will start with the Spring. Is it convenient for you? Okay. So let us continue with the Hibernate session. So as we know, I think you, as you are working and even you have JDBC knowledge, so I think you know why the persistence important. We can't store data for a long time in our heap memory, so we need some kind of persistence. So generally persistence are in either in files or in databases. As of files, we have no security, we have no querying language and complex. The data handling will become complex and slow when we are dealing with huge data. These are the drawbacks when we make a persistent storage for file. Then again, we have other option alternative as database. So again, we have database like object relational database. We are not talking about that. We are talking about RDBMS. Okay. So a database is nothing but an organized collection of data. And the advantage using a database is we get some language which is SQL. So using this language, you can do some CRUD operations. So data is stored in columns, and SQL is DB dependent. Here, this is one important point. We have to acknowledge this, that SQL is DB dependent. Not all the databases SQLs are common. I'm highlighting this point because the Hibernate overcomes this problem. Hibernate is database independent, so I have highlighted this point. Okay. So when I said independent to database means the same logic, like you have, let us say you have a table of bank. Okay, and you have written the logic for insertion, updation, cut operations, all the operations you have written on table name bank. Now if you are going with the JDBC, you need to write separate logic for SQL database, MySQL database. Again, the logic differs for Oracle, differs for Postgres, differs for SQL Server. So you need, in that way I was saying, JDBC is dependent, SQL is dependent to databases. But whereas when you consider Hibernate, you just write the logic and the same logic will work for MySQL, PLSQL, and MySQL, Oracle, and all the other databases. Okay, so drop, yeah, yes. Like the jQuery is independent of browsers. Similarly, Hibernate is independent of databases. So, what are the drawbacks of JDBC? As SQL is DB dependent, so is JDBC. Okay. So, responsibility of exception handling is taken care by the programmer. You gotta try, you gotta catch, you gotta finally again if the exception come in the catch block, you gotta write try catch. So your whole logic will become complex and complex if you go with the JDBC. And the responsibility would be of the programmer to make everything handle. Am I right? So that's one drawback. I'm highlighting this exception handling part because in Hibernate we don't don't need to bother about this exception handling mechanism. Yeah, in JDBC we have checked exceptions, right? The class dot for name or get connection, whatever we use, or even if we use driver manager, data source, whatever we use, those all throws checked exceptions, so we need to check them. But it is not the same case when we come to the Hibernate. There are no exception handling compulsorily required. And responsibility of transaction management should be taken care by the programmer. The thing is, transaction management do everything or do nothing. I think you know about the transaction management, or should I explain, elaborate what is transaction management? Okay, I'll just revise it for you. Let us consider an example. Uh, Let us say a user is has his bank amount, okay, and goes for an ATM. Let us say, or any online on his websites, okay, and he wants to withdraw his amount, but due to some problem, some internet problem or some any network problem, the transaction was cancelled, either from our side, either from server side, or either from user side, or from network error, whatever the reason is, the transaction was cancelled. So now when he rechecks his balance, the balance should not be deducted from his amount because he didn't withdraw it was cancelled in the middle. So actually the transaction management is something like this. Now I'll keep it in this way. Whenever an transaction is performed, it should be fully performed or it shouldn't be performed at all. So if the user withdraws, until and unless we acknowledge that user has withdrawn, the amount has gone to him, we should not cut it. If because of some reasons the user didn't got that balance, so we should roll back his balance into his account. So in the transaction management, we heavily use commit and rollback. So that's what is the transaction management. And in transaction management in JDBC, as a programmer, we need to take care of each and every transactions occurring. Then again, the whatever the points I'm highlighting are seems to be like advantages of Hibernate and disadvantages of JDBC. Okay, and JDBC retrieves data from database to the our program in the format of raw format. I mean, like in result set or any other format, row set, the data whatever we retrieve, we then need to access it and apply it to respective POJOs or respective variables, then use it. Directly, JDBC doesn't retrieve data from database to a POJO. You need to get the data. Let us say you have an POJO named employee and you have a database table named employee. You get the database table data from the employee. Select star from employee. You get the data and you'll hold it in your result set object. Am I right? And once I get that data and I'll do my logic and I'll write it then to the POJO, employee POJO. Then I'll use that POJO. But JDBC doesn't directly read from employee table and keep it into the employee POJO. We get this feature in Hibernate. And result set is not serializable. It means like if I want the whole result set to be sent over the client side from the server to the client, even if I send it will be of no use because the data is not serializable. I need to keep it in a serializable class or any collection, then I need to send that collection. So this is also a drawback of JDBC. So to overcome these drawbacks of in JDBC, we have some OR mapping, a concept called OR mapping. And OR mapping, to give you an overview, I'll keep it like this. A POJO would be directly mapped to a database table. Each and every row of a database table would be represented by a single column of a each and every row of a database table would be represented by an POJO object. Are you following, Mr. Arun? So let us consider an example. Let us say we have a table named student, okay, and we have a POJO named student, and the columns of the database table are ID, name, and total marks. The same column names we have over in our POJO: ID, name, and total marks. So now in this particular manner, the database first row can be represented individually by a single object or POJO object, which is a student. So whatever the first column value of the ID would be represented by our variable ID. The database column value name would be represented by our variable name. So yeah, you can say that. Yeah, I can't say Hibernate is totally different because Hibernate internally uses JDBC. It actually uses JDBC, but we need not to bother about how it is doing. We just want the advantage of the, using Hibernate. We'll directly use OR mapping. We'll just map our POJOs to the tables. We'll use them. Whatever the changes we have, we'll do in our POJO and it will be reflected in our database table. Let us say you want to enter a new entry into a database student table, a new record. What you'll do is you'll create a POJO class, POJO object. You'll assign some values. You'll give the POJO class object like ID, name, and variable. Sorry, max. And you'll just say save POJO.save, and that particular values will go and sit directly into the database. Isn't that easy? No need to load the driver, no need to get that class, no need to get the connection, no need to execute query, no need to iterate through the data and assign it. Yeah, no, not only that, we don't even need to load the driver, we don't even need to write a query. We don't even need to like do exception mechanism like stated in the previous mm, slide. Those are all the advantages, you can say. Whatever the disadvantages are here are simply the advantages of Hibernate. So overmapping is something simple as that. A Java object would represent a database table row, only single row, one object, one row. If you want to display represent multiple rows, you have to create multiple objects. So it's as yes. Hmm. Yes, there are concepts like caching and lazy loading in Hibernate, which we'll see in future. But these concepts helps you in providing performance. But if you think like retrieval of data and creating object is a performance issue, it would be the same thing even in JDBC also. Even after you retrieve billions of data, you need to keep them in some variables or some objects. So the same issue would be in both the sides, okay? But even though the Hibernate provides a performance evaluations by providing some cache mechanisms and lazy loading. So I'll let you know once we reach over there. So basically, I think you get the idea of OR mapping. OR mapping is nothing but object relational mapping. We map a Java object to one row of a column, one row of a database table. Okay, and OR mapping says that whenever you do changes in your object, it should reflect into the database table, and whenever there are changes in the database table, that should reflect in your object. So it's as simple as that. No need explicitly, we need not to write the update queries, insert queries, delete queries. Everything would be taken care by OR mapping. So we can simply say that our Java object and database table rows are synchronized. Are you clear? Okay. So advantages are OR mapping is DB independent. How we'll see. I'll let you know within some time. Okay. So we need not to write some SQL queries and perform the operations. We need not to do bother about that using OR mapping. And Java code becomes database independent. And once we have our own objects, we can even make our own objects serializable by implementing that serializable interface. So the result of the database we can even send over streams if you want, because the objects we are making it as serializable. And exception handling is made easy. Transaction support is very much highly provided in OR mapping, and connection pool support is also provided. Connection pooling, I think you have an idea of connection pooling. So even we got that connection pooling support in Hibernate, and we even got some association supports like one to many, many to one, many to many, and many to one. Like a single entity or a single class would be linked to many other classes. It would be similar to like one table having its foreign key installed in many tables. The same thing, what we can do is one object ID would be linked to many other objects. So these are associations. There are different kind of associations. Those are one to one to many, and many to one, and many to many. A simple example, I could state it like this: a college and a student. For every college, there could be many students. So one to many, college would be one, students would be many. So we could make an association like one to many. This is also an advantage if you go with the OR mapping. Okay. So Actually, there are many other ORM tools available in the market. Why should I use Hibernate is my question. So these are some good points over Hibernate, which makes me go through the learn Hibernate. Productivity. We need not to write the SQL queries and need not to bother about the database errors and all those things. So we can directly focus on our business logic. As we can focus on our business logic, our time to take care of SQL database related code would be reduced, and we can make that database uh, time in some other code, and thereby increasing the productivity of our project. We can increase the quality of our projects because we got some extra time, right? And maintainability, as code would be similarly very small when compared to a JDBC. Heavy programming, try catch and finally we have that. So maintenance of the code would be very easy in Hibernate. And portability, now changing of database is very much easy here. Generally we configure databases in Hibernate using either XML files or is using annotations or using properties file. So if I want to change my database from MySQL to PostgreSQL for some reasons, okay, so I just need to go and change those configurable properties. My code needs not to be changed. So that's one more advantage I get, and it's free. And I mean, free is Hibernate is an open source, so everyone can download and use it. And it's popular nowadays. Hibernate is getting very much response. So as it is popular, if we get stuck into some any error or something, we'll anyways have Google to support us because it is a popular thing, and someone would have got the same problem earlier, right? So that's one more thing. And lightweight ORM, like other no, unlike EJB, which requires server side components to be started. Server should be up and running to use EJB. But in the case of Hibernate, it need not to have some server side to be up and running. We can directly use Hibernate without even server. Uh, yeah, actually, the nowadays industry trends over like whatever is the best in the market. So Hibernate, as it provides heavy transaction support, and because of its advantages, I can simply say that because of its advantages, not only banking, even the hospital management, almost every starting new project is tending itself towards the persistence logic to be Hibernate. Spring and Hibernate are the most common thing nowadays. Even struts is being underused because of the Spring MVC support. So Spring and Hibernate are the most new projects to be recommended. And one more thing, Hibernate is only used for persistence logic. How to store data, how to retrieve data. Then again, what to do with the data, business logic should is not done by Hibernate. We should do it, okay, as a programmer, and it doesn't service like many user like servlets. It doesn't give view like HTML or JSPs. Hibernate is only for persistence logic. No other uses can be done by Hibernate. A simple history about Hibernate. A person named Gavin King, who used to work at Syracuse Technologies, and to make an alternative for EJB2, he created Hibernate. And he created Hibernate. The original goal was to overcome the drawbacks of the EJB2. Okay, so features: Hibernate supports Pojo and Poji model programming. Yeah, plain old Java interfaces, plain old Java objects. So using Hibernate, we can directly work with the Pojo and Poji. We need not to implement some predefined classes and implement some predefined methods. We can directly have our own Pojos. We can make use of them. Are you okay? And API independent. To activate Hibernate software and making saving the components to the database or doing any operations, we need not to implement again interfaces, and we need not to do some special kind of things. It's API totally dependent. Hibernate is, and Hibernate is totally pluggable with any Java or J2EE features. We can either use it for core Java, advanced Java. We can integrate it with the Spring struts, like that. Just even Spring provides some additional features, like Spring has some built-in tags for the Hibernate provides middleware services support like connection pooling, and all those things are very much supported by Hibernate. Even Hibernate got its own language called HQL, Hibernate Query Language, which is database independent. Now, how come this language is database independent? When SQL is database dependent, how come HQL database independent? The reason behind this is simple. We do not query on the database tables, but we query on the objects or Pojo objects. Generally, we say select star from student. Of the table name is student. We say select star from student, but in HQL we'll say from student. Student would be our Pojo, not the database table. So then again, Hibernate internally creates the respective SQL queries based on the database, but we need not to bother about the database, whatever the queries it is generating. And like I said earlier, it got relationship supports like one to one, one to many to one, and many to many. So this was an overview of an Hibernate. Let's have a first look how to work with an Hibernate. And just for an assurance, do you have any IDEs or Java installed in your system? Yeah, ID. I meant ID. Okay, it's well and fine. So what actually we need to install even Hibernate. That's why I was asking you that. We'll do one thing. Uh, how about we go ahead and download the Hibernate software, so that we can even have a look of our first demo program. Even we can complete it your system. Okay. So do one thing. Can you just follow me? I'll send you a link. You just need to download that software. So once we are finished with this theory part, we can directly jump to the programming part. So I'll give you a link in the Skype. You just go through that and download a particular software, so that we can move forward with it. So, here's the link. Please go through that. I just text you in the Skype. Are you able to see the screen? Yeah, sure. Yeah, just go ahead and download that. It's actually of 60 MB as you can see, so it will take its own time to be downloaded. So that will once we complete our session, you could even have a look of our hello world example. Okay, so now let us continue back with our PPTs. So how to work with Hibernate? Hibernate software must be downloaded and configured to use. When I mean, as I think you have an idea, this Hibernate is a software which is not, .exe file. We need to go next, keep on installing. It's not nothing like that. It's just jar files. We need to place those jar files in our class path, and we'll be good to go. Yeah, similar to Struts and Spring, similar thing. Even Spring is not an installable software. It is the same thing. We need to download the the jar files. We need to keep those jar files in our class paths, and we are good to go. So now, Hibernate supports annotation, XML, and properties file configurations. So Hibernate supports these kind of configurations, and these files must specify the database properties which we use. When I say database properties, I mean to say the URL, username, password, driver class. These things can be placed in some configurable property like XML or properties file, and they they must be configured. They must be configurable so that even database team can change the database whenever they want. Okay, let us just have a look of a first sample program, and let us see what are the things that a sample program will need. So you'll have a better clarity of how a Hibernate program works. Hibernate software works. Okay, we'll starting couple of some tutorials. We'll go through the XML files, and once we are good, like we get a good grip of XMLs and get a good understanding, basic understanding of Hibernate, we'll go through the properties and annotation file configurations. So a sample program, to generate a sample program using XML configuration file, we need the following files. First, an XML configuration file which specifies the database properties, like I said, the driver, URL, and the username and the password. Okay, that's the one thing. Second is a mapping file. A mapping file is nothing but it specifies which database table should be mapped to which R class, and again it also specifies under the table which column should be mapped to which variable. So a mapping file just maps a POJO to a database table. So that's what a mapping file is, a POJO, a simple POJO, and a main application. Main application, here's where the work is done. We actually use all the above things in our main application. So let's see each of them individually. So the following are the minimum fields required in an XML configuration file to make the Hibernate work. Sorry, excuse me. So the first line of an XML should be an DTD, which would be acting as a rules and regulation validator for the parser. Hibernate got its inbuilt parser, and it parses the XML files based on the DTD. Okay, Hibernate got its own built-in DTDs. We just need to use them. We need not to write again and specify the whole DTD. We just need to follow the rules and regulations of that DTD file. There's another file called dialect class. Sorry, another property called dialect class. I'll let you know in some time what is the dialect. Okay. I think driver class you can use. URL, username and password are the points you know. Am I right? So we are comfortable with 1, 3, 4, 5, 6 points. Now 2 and 7 points we'll have a look. As stated earlier, Hibernate is database independent. But how does a Hibernate becomes independent can be said easily like this. Hibernate went to each or analyzed each databases and created some dialect classes, and based on those dialect classes it will create the database dependent queries. So for every database there would be one dialect class. So dialect class is nothing but which gives instructions to the Hibernate software which database we are mapping and what are the rules and regulations or what are the query creation criteria it should follow. That is set by a dialect class. You're saying something? So this basically there are many every database has its own dialect class. Like Oracle will have its own dialect class, and MySQL can have its own dialect class. Will have, not can have, will have its own dialect class. So almost every database will have its own dialect classes. Then again, like the driver is provided by databases, the dialect class is not provided by the databases. Direct class is something provided by Hibernate only. Okay, and so at the runtime, after determining the dialect class, Hibernate will understand what is the underlying database it's going to deal with, and it will generate accordingly the SQL queries. So instead of our analyzation what database we have and writing its own SQL queries, it is done by the dialect class, in short, Hibernate, and Hibernate makes use of dialect class in this manner, in this aspect. So once we specify the dialect class, we need not to worry about the database and its specific SQL dependencies. Okay, so this is what an direct class is. So a mapping resource as said earlier, it maps each and every column of a database table to an each and every class variable, to each and every class variable, so that yes, no, actually 100 are not necessary. Whatever you want to use, just define those and you're good to go. If you only want to use 10 of them, just go ahead and define 10 and use 10. You need not to define all of those. Then you have to come down to your mapping resource, add those properties and go to the Pojo, add those properties. Yeah, mapping resource is nothing but mapping the Pojo class to the database table. Let us say my Pojo class name is employee. I'll give a simple diagram so that we could have more clarity on this. Should I? So let us say, I'll increase the size. Let us say this is my database table. Okay, it got only 2 rows. To save time, I'm trying to draw a simple thing. 2 rows and let us say 3 columns. Okay. So the database table name is, let us say, student, student, and the first column is ID. Okay. Second one is name, and third one is marks. So these are my database, and it got some values like 1, 2, name would be uh, Ram, and this would be like Charan, and marks would be like float, something like 69.5, and he got something like 90.5. Okay, so now here's my class. Let us directly draw an object. So this is my class object. This is the class object student.java. Just to make sure that it is a object, I kept .java extension. Okay, so now this has variables in id, and it got string name, and it got float marks, and here is our mapping file. So now this mapping file will say something like this: object object.id should be double equal to table.id, and again it would say object.name should be mapped to table.name. When I say table, I mean this particular table, student, and object.marks should be mapped with table.marks. So this would be my mapping file. Obviously the syntax would be different, but I'm giving you the overview how what a mapping file does. Within some time we'll understand. So now here it's something like this. This particular mapping file will map each and everything respectively and accordingly. The order could be anything. I could define the name first and ID last, whatever could be. Okay, so this would be an overview what a mapping file does. So now in future, if you want to add the columns in your table, you should have to come to your Pojo, add those columns, and you need to update the mapping file again. But if you want to change your database, okay, go ahead, change your database, it doesn't bother. You need not to touch your student file because of the changing in the database, or even you need not to change your logic because you have changed your database. So Hibernate gives you that power. Your code becomes database independent. But if you are making any changes in the databases tables, you need to come and change. We can't yeah, but again, if you change this column name, just come again and here change this name. You need not to search your code. So even column name changing wouldn't be a bother. Deletion wouldn't also be a problem. You deleted ID, come and remove this particular thing. If it is here, it would be just wasted, but it wouldn't disturb your code. Okay. Okay, I'll do one thing. I'll save this particular thing. So I'll handle them. So you can take this particular thing as a reference. So now, where were we? Mapping resource, right? So that's how a mapping resource maps table, class, and a column with a property. Every column with a class properties, I mean variables. Okay. And there can be one or many mapping resources. It's not compulsory like there should be one mapping resource. If you got 100 tables, you need to specify them in a single mapping resource. It's nothing like that. You could have 2 mapping resources, you could have 100 mapping resources. It's your convenience, it's our convenience. Okay, so mapping resource mr, here I specified mr just to specify mapping resource. MR specifies which POJO and which table needs to be mapped, and MR needs to contain one key which is used for synchronization. And this is one important point. Uh, there must and should be one key, primary key, I mean, okay, that would be used as a synchronization. Now you can ask, like, you have a table in that you don't have any particular mapping primary key. So even if you don't have primary key, make some in the mapping resource. Otherwise, there would be no synchronization by the Hibernate software. So we must and should have a mapping key. Sorry, key, primary key. Okay. In the Hibernate, in the mapping file, here, if you haven't defined over here this as a primary key, it wouldn't be a problem. But here in the mapping file, you need to specify that this particular table ID, which is pointing this particular ID, this is actually a primary key. You just need to specify that so that it would be in a synchronization. That's how the Hibernate has been developed. Now, so I think we are clear with the mapping resource. So now POJO stands for plain old Java object. And when I say plain old Java object, I mean it's only a Java object without any burdens. When I say burden, I meant like implementing any classes and having some responsibilities like thread. If I implement, if I create a POJO and implement it a thread, so I there comes to me a burden with implementing run method. So now as I have a burden, it's not a POJO anymore. It became the some class of something. It is not a POJO, it is a thread now. So a POJO can, without any burdens, a class without any burdens can called as a POJO. Okay. So this object contains only variables and the respective getters in Hibernate. But you can go ahead and add some more additional things like enums and all those things. Whatever you want, you can go ahead and add. But basically, we only have some variables and its respective setters and getters. In mapping resource, we map the variables of this POJO to the database column. Earlier, we have seen that we are mapping the class object to the database table, right? So class object is nothing but this POJO class. So there would be a POJO class which would be mapped to the database table. So then again, every object of POJO class would be representing a single row of the database table. So now a POJO object can be three states after creation. Once a POJO object has been created, it can be in three states. Uh, it could be in transient state. I'll elaborate more when we go to the programming on this particular aspect. Okay. Just for the reference, remember these three states: transient, persistent, and detached. And transient state, you have just created the POJOs. It has got some default values or some values. Okay. It is nowhere related to the database engine. That is transient state. And persistent state, now my object is in synchronized with the database table any row. In short, in the Hibernate engine, and my POJO is in synchronized state. So that is persistent state. Now after using, we might close our Hibernate software. Then the POJO, which was used in the synchronized state, will come from persistent state to the detached state. So these three are the places where a POJO can be found. And finally, we need to have a main application. So till now we have seen that we need to have some particular things. One was XML file which had some properties. The second was the Pojo, mapping resource. The third was the Pojo. Am I right? So the final thing is the main application. Now, once we know which database we are going to, what is the username, password, dialects, and we even have mapped our Pojos, created the Pojos and mapped them using our mapping resource. Now just we need a main application or the class which has the main method which uses all the previous things. Now we just gather all the pieces in a single place to make Hibernate work. So this class should activate the Hibernate software. Now activating of Hibernate software is not a very big task. It's just a simple line of code. You just write the line, the Hibernate software gets activated, same as Spring. So this is the class where we do our business logic after retrieving and what we should do, and we should insert or whatever our business logic, whatever our requirement is. This is the place where we can do, and we can perform our CRUD operation on DB using the Pojo object. So instead of directly talking to the database table, we'll talk to the Hibernate using Pojo, and Hibernate taking that Pojo talks to the database. So in short, Hibernate will act as a medium for us and the database. And whatever the database is, we just specify Hibernate that we are using this particular database and this is our data. Go do the task. Hibernate will do that. Simple. So let me just keep all the pieces in a place so that we could understand it more clearly. So now as we have seen, we got our Pojo. I'll just mention over here. This is our Pojo. Okay, it is visible. So now this is my Pojo. I'll just change this font. It is very much funky, right? Is it clearly visible now? So now we have seen a Pojo. How to create a Pojo? We know, as we are from Java background, we can create this simple Pojo, and we know how to create a table. We'll have our table and mapping file. There are some rules and regulations for the mapping file. I'll tell you how and in some moment. And this is the mapping file. Okay, no need to specify that. And we need to have even one more thing. I'll call it the XML file, XML configuration file. So now this XML configuration file will in short use this file, mapping file. Mapping file maps the Pojo to the database table, and our main application will simply use this file, main application. Main application, let me say like with business logic, B logic. So now as the figure represents, we are not bothered about what the database, underlying databases. In our business logic, we are just we are doing directly our business logic. We'll get this particular object. We'll always talk to this object. We'll never talk to the database table. Okay. So our main application would be directly linked to these three, but not to the database table. Hibernate stands between our main application and the database. So again, there would be an entity over here. I'll say I'll make it as a diamond thing. So this is the main thing, Hibernate, hb, which utilizes all these things. It wants the configuration file, it wants the mapping file, it wants the POJO, and it wants the table. Now this particular small software is related to all of these things. So that's how it is. Yes, obviously there should be a code which loads the XML configuration file. Obviously we are saying which is the, what are the database details in the configuration file. Then again, after starting the Hibernate engine, we need to specify the Hibernate engine, what is the XML file we are using. Then again, we have an option over here. If we name the file, XML configuration file, this particular file as hibernate.cfg.xml, if we make the same name as this, then we need not to specify the XML file. If we want any other name as per our company requirements, like we'll have some common naming patterns according to our companies, so we need to go with that, and we just need to configure that this is the particular configuration file. No, actually I was saying something like this. I'll do one thing. Okay. hibernate.cfg.xml. IBM conf.xml. So now here you can see the file name is hibernate.cfg.xml. If the file name is something like this, hibernate.cfg.xml, without any spelling mistake, and resides in the same folder where the main application is, then we need not to specify the Hibernate configuration file, or either if it is in class path, then we need not to specify the configuration of that particular file. If it is, the file name is something like this, ibm.conf or something, whatever the name, abcd, asdf, if any other name we have for our configuration file name, then we need to specify, because the Hibernate by default it looks for the file name dot this hibernate.cfg. If it finds it, then it will load it. If it doesn't find, then it will look for the configurator, that did we have any configurations. Okay. But yeah, 3 configurations we can do that. So as I said, there's a single line of code to use Hibernate. We need to use that single line of code which activates the Hibernate software. So once we activate our Hibernate software, we need to read the file. We'll just go through these points and we'll see a sample program and come back to this file, this particular point, so that we can have much more clarity. We will compare that particular image and these points to the program. So we'll have again an overview, a good understanding of how Hibernate handles things. Okay. So the second point, session factory needs to build, and this factory builds connection full. There's a concept called session factory in Hibernate. This session factory is nothing but we can think it of as a memory space. Session factory is a memory space built by Hibernate. Now this session factory will do nothing but it will store the connection pools. It's like a connection pool which holds the connection objects. Okay. And the session factory object is thread safe. Once we generate a session factory, we need to get the session object out of that. So every session from every session would be like talking to the databases. Like we are saying this as a session. First session is an introduction. So every session will have a set of transactions. Okay. So for that, even session is an object. That session object is held by session factory. So once we get the session factory, we need to get the session object out of that. But then again, this session object is not thread safe. So we got to have a safe side for that. And after getting the session object, we can have our operations and close the above resources session and the session factory. We'll come to the flow later, and we'll see the architecture even later. Okay, as the downloading finished on your side, so okay, just have a look of what I am doing, so that you could redo the you can perform the steps again at your side. I did download it with you the same thing, so that if you can see what are the exactly steps I am following, so that we don't have any differences between your software and my software. Uh, it supports both. After 1.5 we can use Hibernate, but why to bother about going about 1.5, because even 1.6 is the standard, and even industry is moving through 1.7 nowadays. Oh my god, which company did you say? Client is okay, but again then again it's a Java 5. Okay, even Java 5 is okay, but we lack many new features, because if we don't move to the things. But then again, people are good with the Java 5 because they get a lot of security issues. Market doesn't trust everyone easily, that easily. As that too, the Java is now under the control of Oracle, so everyone is afraid when he's going to charge, when will he make Oracle, sorry, Java as a commercial software. Everyone is afraid of that, and they are even making counterparts for that. So even the people who used to use MySQL database, now they are migrating from MySQL to PostgreSQL, because then MySQL has been bought with the Oracle. Yeah, it's again then again it's changes, but the whole technology Java is under Oracle. We can't predict what he'll do. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's very much annoying, but it was a perfect business for them. So then again, even we can't say what's predictable. So we'll do one thing till it completes its downloading. I'll go to the Eclipse. Generally, I use mm, you know uh, NetBeans, but as you said, you use Eclipse, so we'll go through Eclipse. I like Eclipse. Sorry, NetBeans, because it's freeware, and it became a habit like to me using Eclipse. Okay, even though whatever the ID is, it should be easy. Okay, where's the where are you, Explorer? Where is Explorer gone, man? On perspective. Okay, where is how to? Sorry. Okay. Is it clear now? Okay. I'm deleting this particular project. So I'm creating a new project. What is the new project? Here it is. And we'll say this as HB tutorial. So next, where this should be saved, where is that asked? Yeah, use default location. No, I don't want it to be in the default location. I want it to be in the D drive, the Excel online classes. In the Excel online classes, I want to make a new folder, Eclipse, HB tutorial. So from now on, whatever we'll do in this particular thing. In this project, we'll go and keep on adding things. Okay. Yes. So a sample project of mine is created. Now I clicked on my Eclipse. First, I'll add that particular, the jars. Yeah, I said my Eclipse. Okay, do you have Eclipse Indigo? I think I have Indigo and I have this, but I don't have what you are saying. No, this is my Eclipse. Indigo, I even have Indigo, but I never come to Eclipse actually. I just come to Eclipse for doing some R&D purposes, whether this has it or not. I was looking for the version. Okay, anyhow, should I work on this or would you be comfortable if I go with the Indigo? No, my Eclipse is again a paid version. Okay, so I'll go with the, okay, I'll go with the Indigo then. I'll go with the Indigo. Like, where was it? Softwares. I don't remember where I kept that because I don't use even Indigo that. Logic compared to was these. Okay, I'll do one thing. I'll install Indigo tomorrow. Then again, it's the same steps whether you go with the NetBeans or MyEclipse or whatever. The same steps can be followed. But for your convenience, what I'll do, give me time till tomorrow, and I'll install. I'll download that particular Indigo version, or just you in the Skype you just text me what software you are using. I'll download that particular software and we'll go through that software. Just type it in the Skype. Okay, I'll Google it. Even though if spelling mistakes are there, no problem. Okay, I'll just write Eclipse GAMA. Okay, NAMIDE. Okay, and just have a look. I just texted you in there. So let me just Google it. If I found it, it's a better thing. Oh, come on. Okay, is this the one you're saying? Okay, I'll do one thing. Tomorrow I'll by tomorrow I'll just have a brief of this particular software so that we could work with this. So for now, as our first example, we'll go through NetBeans. Okay. Yeah, even NetBeans is a freeware. NetBeans is one of my favorite IDE. From my learning time, I use NetBeans. So the same thing, new project, Java application, and next, let us name it as what? HB tutorial already exists. Okay, my bad. I'll change it into the Excel online classes. Instead of Eclipse, this would be NetBeans. So now in the NetBeans, I have to create a new one because it already got some data from that particular tutorial, so that in future we'll directly save everything to here and directly use this particular thing. So I don't want a main class, I just say finish. So now I want to add all the libraries what we just downloaded. All the libraries, these are all the jar files. Actually, all of them are not needed. These are the required things which are in the required, and all other things are optional. But even though they are optional, they are used in some features which we are going to have a look in the future. So not having any problem in the future, I just want to add them right away. Okay, so I'll just open my NetBeans again. I'll say the same process you can even do for your Eclipse also. Just go into the properties and you got to add a library. Instead of adding all the jar files, what I will do is I'll create a library and keep all my respective jar files in this library. So just now I have downloaded everything into this and this here. So this might take a moment. Please be patient with me. There are some 5 to 6 folders to go and add all of those. I am doing it again just to make everything clear to you, so that again you wouldn't have any problem in future. So that even you could move parallel with me, like the session continues, even you can work on the examples day by day. So as you can see, I'm just going and taking each and every folder jar files. This might increase our project size from 5 to 6 MB, but I think that wouldn't be any issue. 5 to 6 MB nowadays is not at all an issue. So even the real-time environments you can do the same thing. So, okay. So now our Hibernate required whatever the thing is got added to the project. So what I'll do is I'll create a new package. I'll say it as first look. So inside this package, I'll place those four required, files. Let me just, as a reminder, I'll just saying you what are the four required files. First is the XML configuration file. Second is the XML mapping file. Third is the Pojo. Fourth is our main application. So these are the four things required to have an understanding of our Hibernate software. So let me just go ahead and create files. This would be hibernate.cfg.xml. The configuration file. In this file, I'll place all my database related things. I'm just creating a structure right away. And one would be mapping file. So let me say, let us first go with the student thing. Whatever we have devised over here in our diagram, student database table and student Pojo mapping file which maps this Pojo to the thing. The same diagram example will create it in this explorer so that we could have a better thing. So this would be student mapping .xml file. So again I need a Pojo, a class name, not Pojo, sorry, student. So student would be my class name, and there's one more thing. The final thing would be the main application. Let me say, okay, main application. So main application, as you know, should have PSVM. We are good. So now I'll just do pseudo coding for you. Then we'll add the respective things here. So activate the Hibernate software first thing, and configure the database XML file, db XML file. Then create the Pojo and assign some values. After assigning some values, we gotta save that Pojo. And as we have said something about, if you remember, something about session factory and session, create session factory and session, I'll let you know what are these. Okay, and finally close the above resources like session and all those things. Close the resources. Okay, so below these lines we'll directly write our code so that we could understand it more clearly. Okay, so are you here with me, Mr. Arun? So student, we'll start off with the basic and easy things, then we'll go through the hard things. Okay, I'll just open my diagram and see. I have ID, I have name, I have marks. Okay, so the same things I'm creating over here. Private int ID. Okay, and private string name and private int float. These variables need not to be, private, but as encapsulation thing, I'm keeping them as private. Okay. So now I want to create the setters and getters for this. So in in this we'll do it as insert code. Alt insert is the shortcut. So getter and setter. I want getter and setter for all the three things: ID, marks, and name. So one thing is now complete. The student. Let me open the image again. This particular entity is complete. Now I need to create these five things. So total are five things. If in short, if I include the database table, there are five things. One is complete. Student.java. The main application, XMLs, and the database table are the remaining things. So for the first example, what we'll do, we'll go ahead and pick up the database of Oracle. Okay. Do you have Oracle installed in your system? Okay, you need to install. Okay, do you have MySQL installed? Yeah, MySQL is open source. Okay, do you know the procedure how to download and install Oracle or MySQL? Okay, I'll just give you an overview how are things with Oracle and how are things with MySQL. Yeah, Oracle is not freeware, but Oracle, it even got more reputation than MySQL. So that's the way I was saying. That's the reason I was saying Oracle. But even personally, I like MySQL than Oracle. So if you go with the MySQL, it's even good, easier for me. Okay, but to make things simple, I have to say this that if you want to check that this particular thing, Hibernate is database independent yourself, then you need to install it. But anyhow, at my side, I have two databases installed, one Oracle and MySQL. So I'll show you the difference. I'll show you the execution of the programs in MySQL and Oracle without changing the business code or Java code. I'll just change the database and it will work. I'll show you those examples. But doing some R&D, you need to go ahead and install it on your side. Even I prefer like you install it on your side. So we'll work with the Oracle, MySQL or Oracle. What do you want? Okay, okay, fine, no problem. Whatever you say. So, do you have SQL yoke? Okay, you don't even have MySQL database, right? So, do one thing. After installing MySQL, this is the freeware again. No, this is not a freeware, but it's a very good UI look for MySQL database support. SQL yoke. It's a very good thing if you go with that. I'll just type the name for you. SQL yoke is a software name. It is only used for MySQL. For Oracle, we'll get the built-in support. For Oracle, we'll have the UI editors we have. For Oracle, we need not to bother, but for my SQL, we need to have some UI. So I chose this one. So we'll go ahead and create a database. Create database. Let me say HB tutorial. Let me make it as short. I'll say HB. Okay. Use HB. Okay. Are you at any point if you are not understanding any of my code, you just ask me. I'll let you know. Okay. So these are two lines are comfortable with you. Creating database using that database. Okay. Yeah, this is MySQL script, but this is also a MySQL database. This is just a UI for MySQL. It's that simple. Okay. Yeah, yeah, okay. If you want, I can go with the Oracle also. Okay, okay. We'll go with the Oracle. Create table. We'll give a table name student. I want to create a table with name student. The first, what for the IDs? ID, name, and marks. So I need to have first ID of type number. Let me say 10 or even make it 20. And I want that this particular thing to be primary key. Then I have name varchar 2 of 20, and this can be null. I don't want to give that particulars. Then I want float, and the precision I want to be of 5. So this is my simple student table. So describe student, student. So it got ID, name, and marks. So we got our Pojo, we got our student. So the next thing what we'll do is make a mapping file. So to create a mapping file, I'll do one thing. I have some earlier sample. So there are some DTDs. I think DTDs are better if not copied. So if copied, right? I don't want spelling mistakes to do in DTDs. So I'll just copy the DTDs from the existing applications. Okay, I got a lot of programs. If you want, I can give it to you. Okay, this is, no, I don't want to keep it in the editor. So now this is the thing. Okay, I was in this only, right? So we got student, we got that. Now we want to do student mapping. Student spelling is wrong. Okay, STUDE. Now it's perfect. So now, as you can see, I got the XML and I got the doc tag. This both declares what kind of DTD it should have. Now everything in the Hibernate mapping file should be downloaded. Inside between Hibernate mapping tag, in this particular tag, and then again everything. Let me just have a quick look. Class, IDs, and properties. Okay. So then again, class. Here I need to give the class which I am going to map, and then again here I need to give the table which I am going to map. So I want to map this particular package dot. Why are you giving me this particular name? Okay, I want to give this thing. So I want to map this particular thing with the table. I just want to confirm the name student. So I want to map this with student. So like I said, this mapping file must and should have a primary key, and that would be represented by an ID tag. ID tag, and the name would be, what was our name? ID, right? And sorry, the column would be ID. So I am closing this tag. So in short, what I am doing is the same thing in the paint. I am mapping this ID to this ID. In this mapping configuration file, like I said, I am mapping ID to ID, Pojo ID to the table ID, Pojo name to the table name, Pojo something to the table something. So the same thing again. First thing should be an ID, then all the properties whatever you want you can specify it here. Property was name, and column was name, and one more thing was marks, right? What was the other thing? marks. marks. So this is the final thing, and now we have 3 of our resources. Let us have a look of again. Now we got this, and we got this. Yeah, obviously. Otherwise, how would the mapping file name would know what class are you referring this package? Okay, if we have done it in a like a folder, and if we are going to do like in this format, we need not to specify. As you can see here, it is not specified because the mapping file and that file are in the same position. But in this our case, we had specified it in a package. So I said package dot class name. So the other thing is this configuration file. So I don't again want to make spelling mistakes. So I'm going over things, copying each and everything. I'll tell you why. Here we have these things, right? You can see some properties, names. These are some predefined property names and which should not be mistaken. Okay. So as said, the property XML file should have a configuration DTD. This is the DTD which specifies the rules and regulations for the compiler, how to compile this file. Okay. So everything should be under one main tag, Hibernate configuration, and a session factory. Under the session factory, what should the session factory contain? Like we had said, session factory is a place where it contains a connection pool. So the connection pool will basically be generated based on these properties. Okay. So this is our driver class. The same thing. These driver classes are the JDBC. Okay. Like whatever we write class dot for name, the same driver should be written over here. And here is the URL. Driver manager dot get connection of URL, username and password, right? So this is that particular URL, the username and password, and the dialect. I'll once again I'll come back to the dialect once again. How to know dialect and where are the list of dialects. Okay, then again, this particular variables or names, property names are constant. These are not changed, and this should not we should not make any mistake in these. Okay, that was the reason I copy pasted. Then again, I never by hearted these things, so even these are copy pasted, and these are very easy to find. Whatever the driver classes you want to use your database, you can always find it on the Google. So just Google your driver class and database driver class, and you can place it over here. Okay. So I got now 3 things ready. What are those 3 things? Sorry, 4 things ready. I got my Ojo, I got my table, and I got them mapped, and I got my XML configuration file. And this XML configuration file should specify what is the mapping file. And you see the last line, mapping resource. Now first look, student.html, it is not that thing, it is student mapping.xml. So I am specifying the student mapping.xml. So I got my all of the things. Now the only thing remain is the main application. Now to activate the Hibernate application, we need to create a new object of a class. Just a moment, I'll just have a look. Configuration class. Okay, so this is the thing, configure. So this is the class which activates the Hibernate processor. Configuration. configuration. Where are you? Hibernate configuration I want. CFG I would name that, and I would say new configuration. We'll anyhow you know, make it back to the image and that particular thing, so don't worry about that. So configure.cfg.configure, and this particular thing I want to specify. Okay, I need not to specify. Like I said earlier, if the file name is hibernate.cfg.xml, we need not to specify what is the configuration file. So after that, I need to create a session factory. Session factory is something which contains the database connection pool. cfg dot build session factory. Okay, this method got deprecated. Why it got deprecated? Actually, I think in this particular folder only it got deprecated, because earlier when I used it wasn't deprecated. So I need to go through the documentation. I'll let you know tomorrow why it got deprecated. I'm just attaching the documentation. So do you have an idea of how to attach documentation? Yeah, even in the Eclipse it's the same thing. Yeah, documentation. Okay, I'll show you again. I wanted to study the documentation for this. I wanted to know why this build session factory got deprecated, but it said java.notepad, so I want to attach it. So the folder what we have downloaded, it contains the even the documentation. The same thing what you have downloaded is the same thing what I have downloaded. So new, I kept it over here. So just keep this till documentation / docs. So once we give that, now you can see I have this particular thing. Use create session factory. Okay, it's saying to use create configure dot. Okay, why did you got deprecated? Use service registry instead. But what is the service registry? Mutable. Okay, for now we'll use that particular deprecated thing. Tomorrow we'll see. As you can see, I have another examples. Here I use this only, but it didn't got deprecated because I used 3.x. So that might also be the reason. So after getting the session factory, I need to get the session. Session of the Hibernate object, and this is available in the session factory. So I'll let you know what is the session. Don't worry about that. I'll give you some more explanation on these two lines and even the configure. So I'm just making you. We'll just elaborate on how to write a basic Hibernate application. So now we'll do a simple insert operation. Here's what I want to do. I'll give an ID, I'll give a name, I'll give a marks, and I'll directly save. I'll directly tell save. I'll not give the database query insert into table student values. I'll not say anything like that. Okay. So you can see the power of Hibernate in that. So for that, I'll create an object student equal to new student. So student dot set id 1, student dot, spelling mistake, my bad, student dot set name Arun, right? Arun and student dot set marks. How many marks did you got, Arun? Let us say 90.6. Okay. So now we got our Pojo and the values. We got our configurations. Now we want in the configurations we got our database dependencies. We got the mappings. We got everything. We now want to save. Okay. Now, yeah, simple insert operation. So now I want in this table when I say select star from student, it should have ID and name and values whatever I'm giving over here. Okay. So but like I said, this Hibernate provides transaction management, and to perform operations single rows or single column, single bean operations or single row operations, we need to do operations in a transaction. So how we do transaction? Nothing but it's even simple. Transaction. Where are you? Transaction. Yeah. Transaction equals to new transaction. Oh my god. Okay. This is not the way how to get session dot begin transaction and transaction dot come. So now in between these two lines, whatever whatever operations we are doing, okay, using this session object, it will be considered as a single transaction. As simple as that. So now I want session dot save. I want to save student. That's it. I just have to say session dot save student, and that will do the job. Now never to forget to close your session dot session dot close sf dot close, and configuration need not to be closed. Yeah, configuration need not to be closed. So here's what an overview of what we did. We got all the configurations in a single place, so we are just using those configurations. This line says that not only activate the Hibernate software but even configuration, because the name is same, and we are building a session factory, then we are getting a session. Now we have created a Pojo, we are setting some values to the Pojo, and we want to save that Pojo to the database. So without any further telling, let us execute this. My bad, very bad, sorry. I haven't, the exception is like class loading exception, the driver, the Oracle driver I have not given within the class path. So add jar, to keep the class path simple, here's what I did. In a C drive I kept a folder named L, so the class path will not get lengthier. So I am running it again unable to load wordly.h2. What? Loading properties. H2 driver is not loaded. Okay, class loader.impl. What's did I miss any library while adding? these things again. Oracle driver, system, dialect, show SQL, student mapping, post look student, table student, and the student. Yeah. Let me just give. Okay, my bad. I have to give this right because it's not in the same directory. It's actually in a other package in this way. So I need to specify that that it is that particular respective file which I'm going to use. Hibernate, insert into values. Let us just go and check. Yeah. So we got our first application executed without any errors. So that's a relief. Okay, I'll just tell you what happened just now. So in the D drive, I'll just open that particular place to make you understand it more clearly. Okay, this where was 50 right? I have kept it in over here. It means Hibernate tutorial SRC. Project list, build classes. Now you see it is over here. Hibernate configuration file. So the .class file, and it is in the same place, even though the class path of the NetBeans is not looking in the correct file, current directory. Class path of the NetBeans looks into the home directory. It looks into over here. It will check over here whether it got any file over here or not. So that's for the reason it was saying it wasn't unable to find. So I went over this particular thing. I just have given the path. So let us just recap the things. We'll cover what are the missing things. So we got our student, we got the table, we mapped the student with the table, configured the files, and executed the application. So we didn't give any of our database dependent logic. Yeah, creating the table was another part, but even in Hibernate there are some things which we follow. We need not even to create database tables. So yeah. Mhm. Okay, yeah, we can do that. You want to check the speed of the Hibernate and the JDBC. Okay, if you want to do that, we can do it. But to make it simple, I'll tell you this that Hibernate internally uses JDBC. So there would be no point of imagining that Hibernate would be faster than JDBC. So Hibernate would be slower than JDBC, but there are some mechanisms. Okay, we can do the caching process. We can get the data. We can make it save. So in those things, in those particular things, Hibernate is faster than JDBC. But not in all the areas. There are only very specific areas where Hibernate could be more useful, more give us more performance than JDBC. But basically JDBC is faster than Hibernate. But there are again many features which are not present in JDBC, but Hibernate provides it. We got to look to the even bright side. So that's the reason why we are going for Hibernate. So let us just go with the things again. So we have downloaded, we have seen how to configure. We got our first sample program with these things. So we have seen our DTD, configuration file. We got all these things, and dialect class. I think I have you have remember it specifies the Hibernate. Uh, what is the underlying database we are going to connect. Okay, and mapping resource specifies which table should be mapped to which column, and the POJO will have only the variables getters and setters in 3 states. Okay, let me just discuss the 3 states. Here the POJO is in transient state, here the POJO is in persistent state. Then after, if I want to access it over here, student would be in detached state. Student dot, let me say something. So in this place it would be in detached state. So these states are nothing but just to indicate when we could use them and when we shouldn't use them. Okay, a main application we have seen, we did only insert operation as of today. So now session factory, yeah, this is a session factory, is a pool. Actually consider it as like a connection pool. A connection pool sits inside a session pool. You can session factory, you can say that. Okay, so a session factory gives sessions, and using every sessions we can do our code operations. Now flow of HB, this is an important thing for which we came back to the PPT. So HB engine after activation, now when we configured, it will validate the configuration file based on the DTDs. It will not only validates, it will even checks whether the values are proper or not. Like in the configuration file we specify the mapping file, right? If we give improper file for that mapping file, the will get some errors. So that's the first step. Then again it will go for the validation of the mapping file. It will check whether the given POJOs are are in the same package or not, and given POJO variables exist or not. Then if these two things are correct, then it acquires the database connection and does the respective operations whatever is specified. So this is an overview architecture, we can say. Here would be our main application. Here would be the persistent object or the POJO. In between would be the Hibernate engine, which requires these two files. So after having these two files, Hibernate will do the database specific operation for us. Let me just give you a simple example that even Hibernate is database independent. I'll create the same thing over here. Create table student, so that we could specifically say without a doubt that Hibernate is database independent. ID begin, name varchar. There's no varchar 2 in this MySQL. Full varchar 2 and name, sorry, marks. I got marks float of 5. Let me say primary key of ID. So there shouldn't be any error in this. Let us just execute. Oh god, name I should have changed. Name looks like a keyword here. Okay, even though it wasn't a problem, it created it seems. So we got our table student with no data in it. So I'll just go and change the configuration file. Here I'll change the driver, I'll change the URL, I'll change the dialect. So only database specific things I'll change. Let me just have I'm just copy pasting to avoid the spelling mistakes. So here the driver would be the same, but here it is HB, the database name, the username, password, root as of my system. So now again here once more, for we have no data in the table. Now we are going to execute our main application. Class not found. Again the same mistake I did. Can you say what was the mistake? Yeah, you're fast. I gotta give you that. If we go in this thing, so mostly until before even 1 month we should complete the syllabus, the Hibernate. So you can see I didn't change any of my main logic, but I got the same code executed for different database. So this is what the beauty of Hibernate is. Okay, so I think it's 1 hour. I don't know what's the size. Yeah, okay. No, actually, we are not allowed to give any of our details directly. We cannot make any contact with you. We just need to, go through officially. Okay, I'll do one thing. I'll give them the details. Okay, you just inform me what are the details you wanted, and I'll handle it over them, specifying that you asked. Yeah, the session is recorded. That's what I opened just now. It's about 2 hours. What's the size of the recorded file? It's 200 MB. Yeah, even I'll give the program, I'll give the database table creation, I'll give each and everything hard copied. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, I'll inform them, but you from your side also you ask. And one more thing, by tomorrow, please install at least one database. The UI is not required, but the database is a mandatory. Either MySQL or Oracle, whatever it is, just go ahead and install. Okay. And tomorrow morning, at what time do you want the spring class to be started? Yeah, it's very much convenient for me. Okay, so what? How much time would you have? Okay, from 9:45 to 2 hours you want. Okay, and the Hibernate classes daily, even you want 2 hours or 1 hour class is sufficient. Like I said, you are a very fast learning guy. You wouldn't even take a month. Yeah, within 1 month it should be completed for you. Okay, okay. Yeah, obviously we always have a look over your convenience also. So okay, we can do that. And yeah, I wanted to ask in the spring, till which topic did you complete it? Yeah, spring. You said you have some of the tutorials. Okay. Like IOC container. What is IOC container? Dependency injection. Web model, MDC model you have studied. Okay, okay, we'll do one thing. Tomorrow morning even we'll have a look over the Spring module, and then we will decide how to go with the Spring module, and okay, later on. Yeah, yeah, we'll will go. I'll go as if you know nothing. Yeah, yeah, because we always think about satisfying the student clients, because you are the end guys from where the company of our will grow. Okay, okay, then I'll stop the today's session. We'll meet tomorrow morning at 9:45 on the Skype. And one more thing I wanted to ask, like, is your video cam? Do you have any problem with your camera or what? You didn't switch on your camera. Okay, I just wanted to see. Okay, and I'll switch on my camera. There it is. Am I visible? Hi. So, okay, I just wanted to have a look. How do you look? That was the reason, nothing else. So from tomorrow, it's better. We'll have video sessions. So even we can do more bit of interactivity. I can do some of my hand size. I will say this is student, this is table. I'll count like this. So it would be a lot more fun. That understanding clarity would be a bit higher. Okay. Okay, then I'll wind up today's session and we'll meet tomorrow morning at 9:45 for spring. Bye. Bye bye. Thank you. Welcome.